I don't know about you, but I'm growing a little bit tired of hearing that Canadian small, medium, and large businesses are failing because they cannot compete any longer with their neighbors to the south. It is one of the most frustrating things I hear among Canadians who send me emails and social media posts and all of that. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again here. The fact that I can get wine shipped from Italy, France, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Chile, and I can get it faster and cheaper and with fewer hoops than a bottle of BC wine from Kelowna, from inside my own country. Well, that's one of the most ridiculous, embarrassing realities of Canadian life today. It is the definition of absurd. It is a perfect little window into the dysfunction that Mark Carney promised to fix during the campaign. And like every other promise he's made in 2025, he has failed to deliver on all of it in spectacular fashion. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. It's your last word for your Monday. I hope you had a great day and a great start to your week. You know what? This is the thing. Like, all of these promises, they started before he even became officially prime minister. But let's be even more honest here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share your thoughts on this topic down below, especially getting stuff from our own provinces. Many provinces actually went ahead and pulled things from the US, California wines, right off their shelves during the early Trump tantrums from certain premiers, punishing their own citizens and their own small businesses to make a political point here because, why would we let wine shops sell American wine? Yet, those same provinces still make it nearly impossible for Canadians to buy alcohol from other Canadian provinces. Think about the insanity of that. Provinces were willing to block American wine to look tough for a headline, but they won't unblock their own internal trade barriers to help Canadian wineries sell across provincial borders. Not just wineries, breweries, and distilleries as well. All of them can't sell to Canadians across provincial borders. That's how absurd this system has truly become. We were told interprovincial trade would be a top priority. We were told interprovincial trade was going to be fast tracked. We were told the days of bureaucratic walls between provinces were numbered. We were told consumer choice would explode under a Carney government. We were told Canadian producers would thrive. We were told modernization was coming to all of our industries. And we were promised a new era of internal economic cooperation like we had never seen before. A Team Canada approach, they called it, that would cut red tape, eliminate outdated restrictions, and unify the country's fractured economic policy. Rainbows and unicorns. And what do we actually get? Well, if rainbows were black and the unicorn was burned to a crisp because of the heat from it, the same ridiculous regulatory patchwork is still in place. We have had for decades all of this regulatory roadblocks that make absolutely no sense in a modern economy, and the same suffocating layers of paperwork that have Canadians rolling their eyes in frustration almost daily at this point. The Carney Liberals sold a big promise, and just like every big promise they've made since taking office, it evaporated the second the cameras stopped rolling. The second the last vote was counted and they could be sure Mark Carney won, everything evaporated. This is just proof. It's evidence that while the Liberals hold press conferences bragging about progress, the real world, the one where producers actually operate, is stuck in bureaucratic molasses. And nowhere is that clearer than in the story that CTV put out this week about Rebellion Brewing. And Rebellion Brewing is just one of these breweries that cannot ship across provincial lines. They're a small but ambitious Saskatchewan brewery that wanted to sell their beer across Canada and thought with Mark Carney they were going to be able to. Their CEO, Mark Heiss, said the regulatory process was mind-blowing right now, mind-boggling and infuriating. Almost sounds like stupefying, doesn't it? Think about those words for a moment that are getting used around this Carney government. This isn't a political activist, this CEO. This isn't some anti-government firebrand. This is a brewer just trying to run his business, a guy who makes beer. And even he is so shocked he's using words like that at how dysfunctional this whole system in this country is. Rebellion Beer got into Alberta in 2 weeks. 2 weeks they got into Alberta. But Alberta didn't put up barriers for them. Saskatchewan didn't put up barriers either. They treated Canadian beer like, oh, I don't know, a Canadian product. But Manitoba, The next door neighbor? No, the province literally touching Saskatchewan. That took 3 years for them. 3 years to get the same beer into shelves or onto shelves just one province over. 3 years of paperwork and bottlenecks and hoops and revisions and resubmissions. And also consultations, because that seems to be what the government loves. And God knows what else they had to go through to get that through. All so someone in Winnipeg could buy the exact same beer someone in Calgary can grab from the local liquor store without even blinking. Now, granted, Mark Carney did not create these problems. The provinces created these problems, but Mark Carney is the one who promised to fix them. And if that's not a symbol of Canadian interprovincial insanity at this point, that nothing is fixed, well, nothing is a surprise anymore. And Heiss himself said it perfectly. Alberta and Saskatchewan are open markets, while the rest of the country is a labyrinth of closed markets with red tape, bureaucracy, insanity rules, and barriers. We're talking about provinces with 300 to 500 page regulatory documents just to sell alcohol. Think Ontario for a second. Imagine being a small business and you're told, oh, yeah, if you want to ship your beer to BC, here's a 400-page manual for you to look through before you can do it. And that's before you even start the actual approval process. Heiss said he gave up on BC entirely. He gave up on Ontario entirely, not because he didn't have demand for it. Of course he would. I mean, Ontario is the bulk of Canada's population. Not because he didn't have customers, not because his product wasn't good enough. He gave up because the bureaucracy was so thick and buried under mountains of Canadian bureaucratic snow, you could smother a moose with it. And that is happening under a prime minister now who promised to fix this exact issue. And we've had many first ministers and premier meetings that could have solved all of this. Some on Zoom, some around the campfire with whiskey, but nothing has been solved. This isn't ancient history. This isn't a problem that snuck up on the federal government. This isn't even something Mark Carney discovered last week. He campaigned, though, on fast-tracking interprovincial trade. That's the truth, and he hasn't been able to fix it. He toured the country bragging that he would break down these barriers. He lectured premiers about blocking the arteries of our economy. He vowed to modernize the internal market. He used this issue as a talking point to justify his economic leadership in this country, and he has failed. And how many times and how many episodes are we now saying this? Because here we are. Canadians still cannot legally order a bottle of BC wine and have it shipped to Ontario. Think about that. I mean, they are, but is it legal? We're not sure. We are a country pretending to be a G7 economy, pretending to be globally competitive, pretending to be a modern federation, and we cannot figure out how to sell to each other, how to let Canadians ship wine across the imaginary line on a map. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business called it what did they call it? A confusing patchwork. That's what they called it. That's a polite way. That is a polite way of saying it's a disaster. That's really what that says. Different labeling rules in each province, different markup rates in each province, different forms, different testing, different requirements, different reporting, different obligations, different product registration and protocols. It never ends. All for businesses trying to sell alcohol inside the same country. And alcohol's not the only thing. But alcohol is a prime example of how we can't get out of our own way. This is why our productivity is tanking as a country. This is why investment is fleeing this country. This is why a small business is suffocating everywhere across this country. This is why Canadian producers feel like they're constantly running uphill wearing lead shoes. We have created this system where selling alcohol, or other things for that matter, across Canada is harder than selling it across the Pacific Ocean. How is that even possible? This is our own country. Now, to be fair, provincial premiers did agree to some changes earlier this year. They did actually do it, we think. They promised consumer choice, transparency, direct-to-consumer shipping by next year. But wow, 2 years from now, Canadians might maybe be able to order wine by 2027 directly from a winery in another province. But even that is being heavily qualified. The memorandum doesn't force products onto store shelves. It doesn't fix markup rates. It doesn't fix the bureaucratic paperwork nightmare that might be in the way to get this to go through in the first place. It doesn't eliminate duplicative testing. It does not solve the fundamental problem that provinces are protecting their monopolies at the expense of Canadian consumers and also, of course, these Canadian businesses. Some of these wineries and distilleries and breweries are quite small and they could really benefit from this trade. The CFIB hit the nail on the head when they said these changes don't go far enough, fast enough. Not even close. You cannot brag about progress when the reality on the ground is that Canadian producers are still giving up on expanding to other provinces within their own country. Rebellion Beer is a prime example. They cannot get into BC or Ontario because the process to do so would be insane. That's the real world we face here. That's the truth in Canada, and that's the truth Mark Carney doesn't want you to think about on a daily basis when he stands at a podium boasting about historic cooperation between provinces and all these memorandums of understanding he's signing around the world. Because here's the real kicker. If Mark Carney cannot fix interprovincial trade, something entirely within an easy federal and provincial control, how in the world is he supposed to fix international trade? If he can't get BC and Ontario to agree to a streamlined process for selling their beer and wine to each other, how is he going to renegotiate massive trade frameworks with the United States on automotive, steel, and lumber? How's he going to negotiate with Europe or Asia if he can't get Doug Ford to agree with David Eby? If he can't get Canadian provinces to stop blocking other Canadians, how is he going to stop the Americans from blocking us? This is the exact same problem we saw with the Grey Cup deadline we talked about this morning in the first sip. If you haven't seen it, go take a look. Carney is out here promising modernization, promising integration, promising the use of our resources, promising efficiency, and nothing is actually getting done. All of his major projects are smoke and mirrors. They're already underway. They didn't need the major project office in the first place. So here's the same painful truth today. This prime minister delivers headlines and does not deliver outcomes. He delivers deadlines, but not results. He delivers optimism in his headlines, but no action to go behind it, and then the projects just fail. And all the while, Canadian small businesses, wineries, distilleries, and breweries themselves suffer. Consumers suffer. Innovation suffers. Economic growth really suffers. And the country becomes more fractured, more frustrated, and more exposed as an unserious player in a world where efficiency and technology matter. And if we can't come to play, we're going to fail. The greatest irony of all is that the only jurisdictions that are doing this correctly are Alberta and Saskatchewan, the two provinces who many people would love to just separate from the country. Are they exact same jurisdictions liberals love to demonize? Yeah, they are. These provinces prove that it's possible to open markets, reduce red tape, and actually treat Canadian producers like they matter. And instead of following their lead, Mark Carney's liberals in Ottawa, they're pretending progress is happening while we raid stories of 3-year approval timelines. Are you kidding me? 3 years in our own country and 400-page regulatory documents. This is not progress, Canada. This is not modernization. This is not the Canada strong economy we were promised during the election campaign. It is total and utter dysfunction continued, dressed up as supposed reform. It is bureaucracy painted as innovation. It is political theater substituting for real action in this country. The Carney Liberals said that they would fix interprovincial trade. They haven't. In fact, the evidence suggests that it may have even gotten a little bit worse. But here's the thing, they won't try to fix it because fixing it would mean taking on entrenched provincial monopolies and stepping on toes, something Mark Carney has avoided at every turn since taking office. Canadians should be able to buy Canadian alcohol anywhere in Canada. And it's not just alcohol, Canadian products. They should be able to see a BC doctor. They should be able to mix anything from provinces, period. No excuses, no delays, no 2026 frameworks, no 300-page binders, no decade-long negotiations. Fix it, open it. That's it. Remove the barriers. Let Canadians support Canadian producers. But instead, under Mark Carney and his Liberal government, we are exactly where we've always been. Stuck, stagnant, overregulated, and falling behind. Another promise broken, yet another one. How many have we talked about, even in just the last 7 days? Another headline unfulfilled. Another failure the Liberals hope nobody notices. Well, we noticed, and we're going to keep producing it and reporting it every single day because it's time. It's time for Canadians. It's time Canadians themselves stopped accepting this as normal. We need to speak up in the comments down below. We need to share this video. We need to do something about all the broken promises, failure, and inaction by this Liberal government. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things. The last word for your Monday will, of course, be back at 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow on Tuesday for your first sip. But until then, I hope you have a great Monday evening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, share all of your thoughts in the conversation down below. And if you don't mind, share the video as well. And we will see you tomorrow morning. Have a great Monday evening, everybody.